Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, well, that was a mix-up then. Yeah.
Yeah, real good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hun? Yeah, he's here. Yeah, I'll catch him for you.
Yeah.
2:30.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I already got the... yeah, so we're all set then. Yeah, but, okay, real good then. Yeah, thanks, Stan. Yeah, right. Yeah, but I... Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah?
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that can happen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, is that useful to you?
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
Yeah.
The heck do you mean? Oh, jeez.
Jeez.
This is a nice place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, I think I remember. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You darn tootin'.
So, Fargo, 1996, directed by Ethan Coen. Is it Joel? Ethan, which one's credited this time?
I think both? Joel. I believe it's Joel.
Okay, even though they both do it. All right, so Fargo, we've got a special guest, Josh Bell from the awesome movie Year. Been looking forward to this conversation, but before we go ahead and talk about our second dip into Coen territory, I thought it was interesting because, again, you had Fargo listed as one of your movies that you wanted to cover, and when I was speaking to Josh, he was like, yeah, I want to cover Fargo, and then you also said Big Lebowski, so I thought, hey, why don't we just pair them up instead of splitting them up and doing like opposite ends of the season? So that's why we decided to do Fargo here. But again, before we talk about that, let's go ahead and recap last week's Big Lebowski. How did we come down on Big Lebowski, Johnny?
Well, I think we both agreed it was worth remembering. I mean, I really liked it. I didn't always like it, and it took time for me to really appreciate this movie. And if you're one of those people who doesn't quite sure what you think of it, then just watch it again, and then watch it again, and you might find yourself, latching onto it like I did, or like so many people have too.
Yeah, we had some Twitter friends that commented. That's a very common tale. It's like some people just weren't sure. I'm not sure if it's the Fargo factor. I'm not sure if it's the Raising Arizona factor, but just, at the end of the day, not all movies need to have some kind of deeper meaning. Some movies you just sit back and you enjoy, and there are meanings in there. I don't think they're as, present or in your face as some of their other movies, but they're there if you're looking for it. But it's just a good time. It's like you're just relaxing and just like with the dude and just kind of chilling through everything. So there's nothing wrong with that. Just
I gotta say, I've had the Kenny Rogers song just dropped in my head this episode, so I'm looking forward to getting a new song in my head.
Yeah, it's weird that it doesn't sound like the Kenny Rogers that we know. Like
I know,
it doesn't sound like the gambler Kenny Rogers. It's just
I know.
Anyway, so yeah, Big Lebowski, big recommendation from us. So let's go ahead and move from one Coen Brothers movie to the next Coen Brothers movie. Let's talk about Fargo with special guest Josh Bell. But before we do that, let's go ahead and watch the trailer.
Once upon a time.
Looks like she's gonna turn cold tomorrow. Yeah, you got that right.
There was a salesman called Jerry Lundergaard.
Okay, real good then.
Who always dreamt of striking it rich.
Wade, have you had a chance to think about that deal I was talking about, those 40 acres there in Wayzata?
Jerry, we're not going to just give you $750,000.
No, but see,
So, we all set on this thing then?
You want your own wife kidnapped.
Now, her dad, he's real well off.
So why don't you just ask him for the money?
Hon? Wade, it's Jerry. I don't know what to do. It's something hard, geez. It's terrible.
But in a place called Fargo...
Mr. Lundegaard? I'm a police officer from up Brainerd investigating some malfeasance.
Anything can happen.
How's Jean?
Who's Jean?
My wife.
Oops.
All due respect, Jerry, I don't want you mucking this up.
The heck do you mean?
No Jean, no money.
Who are you?
Circumstances have changed, Jerry. What the heck do you mean? Blood has been shed, Jerry.
Here's the
I want you to tell me what these fellas look like.
Well, the little guy, he was kind of funny looking.
Can you be any more specific?
He wasn't circumcised.
Geez, that's a good lead.
Yeah.
From the creators of Barton Fink
I'm cooperating here. And there's no,
and Raising Arizona,
What do you fellas got yourself mixed up in?
Oh, jeez. You're there in 30 minutes or I find you, Jerry, and I shoot you, and I shoot your wife, and I shoot all your little children, and I shoot them all in the back of their little heads. You got it? You should see the other guy.
Oh, geez.
Fargo.
End of story.
Okay, Fargo from 1996, directed by the Coen Brothers, starring Frances McDormand, William H. Macy, Steve Buscemi, Peter Stormare, Harv Presnell, bunch of other great side actors. Obviously, this ties in with our last episode, The Big Lebowski, and our guest, when I asked him to give us a list of movies, Fargo was I think the only one. Josh, is that right? Like, was that the only one you gave us? And so I was like, Johnny has that on his. I think that's how it worked, right?
Well, I mean, I was trying not to give you like a huge list, I think. And the idea, this was a while ago that we put this together, but the idea was that we were going to pick a movie from a year that we have covered on my show, Awesome Movie Year. Right. So, I mean, I love The Big Lebowski. Like, The Big Lebowski is one of my favorite movies of all time. But because we had done a season on the films of 1996 and we had not done an episode about Fargo, so I haven't already spent an hour on a podcast talking about this movie, that seemed like the good choice. So it isn't like this is the only movie that I like from the 90s, but it was definitely a top choice.
Yeah, well, I think that's one that jumped out on us since Johnny gave us that list. But yeah, again, we'd like to welcome our next great guest, Johnny, Josh Bell. He is the one half or one third. How do we describe like David Rosen? Like,
well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't want to minimize Dave because he contributes a lot, but he is technically our producer on Awesome Movie Year, and Jason Harris and I are the co-hosts. So I would say like one half, but Dave contributes, and more so, I mean, behind the scenes to an incredible degree. We would not have a podcast without him. But even beyond that, in our early days, he didn't contribute much to the discussion because he never bothered to watch the movies that we were talking about. But he's really put forth more effort for quite a while now and watches the movies, and he does contribute as well.
Right. And again, David Rosen, we've had him on. We discussed Little Shop of Horrors with him. That was a great conversation. And he was the one that, was looking for guests. And he's like, you know what? If you need to, you reach out to my buddies, Awesome Movie Year, and see if they want. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why haven't I thought of that before? So that's how we got in touch. And then Jason, I know that when we were talking, his movie was, he wanted to do Trees Lounge. And I thought that was going to be interesting because Buscemi's in that, right? And so why don't we tie that in? But it was more of let's just kind of whittle it down and just talk about Fargo, right?
Right. Well, Jason is like obsessed with Trees Lounge. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that, but he is a huge fan, and actually like multiple times he's sort of attempted to get us to do an episode on it, and it's not that I don't want to, it just hadn't really fit in the schedule, and so it was another opportunity for him to kind of get a chance to talk about that movie. But we'll have to push it. I'm sure we'll do an Awesome Movie Year episode, like a bonus episode or something on it eventually, because he's so into it. And Steve Buscemi actually directed that movie in addition to starring in it. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I've been meaning to watch that one. So that was definitely, that's on our plate there, and it'd be interesting to hear a conversation. But again, Josh, you're a writer, you're a film and TV critic. Let's see, you've submitted, or not submitted, but you've, what's the word I'm looking for? You like Crooked Marquee and Comic Book Resources and Film Racket and Highway Vibe, KTNV Action News. You're a contributor to all those. And so aside from running Awesome Movie Year, I mean, explain to us and the people that aren't familiar, that that listen to us, that aren't familiar with you, like, where do you come from? Like, what is your history with movies? How did you become like a freelance critic? And just explain to us about you and about Awesome Movie Year, if you can.
Well, my life begins when I was born. Yeah, I've been lucky to have been professionally writing about movies for 20 years now. I always loved movies, and I wrote about movies in my like college newspaper and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I got lucky in my first post-college job working at Las Vegas Weekly, which is a weekly newspaper here in Las Vegas where I live, and was an intern there, and then eventually was hired as a full-time staffer. And because at the time there wasn't really anyone devoted to doing movie reviews, but they had movie reviews, I filled that void, I guess. I was eager to do it, whereas other people were just kind of, it was an extra thing that they tacked on to their workday, or they would get it from the Associated Press or something just to like fill space in the publication. And so I could fill that space, and I just kept going and going and going at it. And it became my thing that I was known for there. And that really helped launch my career. I mean, it was what I wanted to do and what I was excited to do. And I kept doing it at Las Vegas Weekly for quite a few years, up until 2018, when they decided they no longer wanted movie reviews in their publication. And so, and I was just doing it as a freelancer for a number of years, even at that point. So I was freelancing elsewhere. And so, yeah, lucky enough to have built up all those clips for all those years, and was able to get myself in other publications. And I write reviews regularly for Crooked Marquee, for CBR, for The Inlander, which is an alt weekly in Spokane, Washington, and Film Racket, not as much anymore, but from time to time. And yeah, and various things for, I don't need to give you my whole resume, but various things for various publications. I do reviews on the radio and on TV here in Las Vegas as well. And I do Awesome Movie Year.
Oh, wow. That is quite a history.
Sorry, that was a lot. That was too much.
No, that's good. And how did you get started on Awesome Movie Year? I mean, how did that? Well, first of all, just to preface that, I think I was listening to an episode where it sounded like you and Jason knew each other from when you were like in high school. Like you were talking about writing like a spec script for like a softcore, like your teacher put that up. But like, how long have you guys known each other for?
Yeah, we have been friends since we were in high school. And so Jason a few years ago said, I want to start a podcast. And I said, okay. Really, that was basically it. I had done a podcast through Las Vegas Weekly that was just kind of here are the new movies of the week, and me and a different guest would review the new movies of the week each week. And it was a shorter, 15, 20-minute kind of thing. But he wanted to do initially a podcast only about the movies of 1999. And because he had read a book about 1999 and how it was the greatest year of cinema. And there are at least 2 other podcasts that are solely devoted to the movies of 1999, including one I think that maybe is through The Ringer. So it has like a very big audience. And so I didn't want to just jump on doing the exact same thing as some other podcast. And so my suggestion was that we do a podcast where we pick different years and do seasons. And eventually we did get to 1999 in a later season. When we were established already, I felt like that was best. So, and my other thing was, if we're going to make a podcast, we have to have David Rosen produce it, because we don't know what we're doing.
Right. So what, if you could explain to us just briefly, what is the format of Awesome Movie Year? I mean, and just basically explain that to us.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I kind of hinted, each season we pick a different year in the history of film, and each episode is devoted to one movie from that year. We have some categories that we generally focus on each year. It's switched up slightly depending on the year, but major things like the Best Picture winner and the top movie at the box office and some big film festival winners. And then we each will kind of pick our own personal choice from the year and do an episode on that, and some different genres and stuff. So yeah, we've done everything from, we are currently, well, I don't know, depending on when this comes out, we may currently be in our season on the films of 1953, which is the furthest back we've looked. And I'm a big fan of older films. So I've been, for a long time, we've been doing this podcast like 3 years, and I've been trying to get us to look back that far. And so I was excited for that. But we've done a bunch of seasons on films from the 90s. We started with 1994 and we did get to 99 eventually. And like I said, we did one on 96 as well. 70s, 80s, 60s, 2000s. We just kind of have jumped around and tried to keep the variety going.
How do you decide which year you're going to pick? Like, how do you know? Like, who decides that?
Well, it's a process. I mean, I'm sure you guys know, as the co-hosts of a podcast, that there's a long discussion period about what are you going to do in each episode? What are you going to focus on? So yeah, it's the same process. We started with 1994, which I think we were fairly in agreement on. It's a formative year for the two of us, who were both, I was born in 1979, he was born in 1980. So we were both teenagers and really just kind of first getting into film around that time. And yeah, then it's a discussion about what's interesting, what years have movies we want to talk about, and kind of keeping a variety going. Like I said, I'm always pushing for us to go further back, hoping we're going to do a season on 1939 coming up, spoiler. But that'll probably be like 4 seasons from now, because we're going to have to do 3 seasons on the 90s to appease Jason first. So this is kind of the balance that we have going on here is that. And there's a lot of back and forth behind the scenes, and it all works out in the end.
And again, with Awesome Movie Pod, you guys are so relaxed. I think having David as who again is a good friend of ours too, but he's so relaxed and so chill. And I think I'm not sure if it's purposeful, but I think you've kind of adopted that for Awesome Movie Year. You have this like chill, laid back, conversational that I really enjoy listening to. And even though you've had your arguments, I know just recently, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, like Jason was like, well, why aren't you picking on this, or what, all this stuff. But it never like descends into it's always funny that you stand your ground and like he stands his ground. So we get the perspective of where you guys are coming from without it seeming like sniping. I really like the attitude of Awesome Movie Year that you guys have going, or the feel of it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it does come from the fact that we have been friends for so long, and we've had discussions like that just between ourselves. And we know that if we disagree with each other, it doesn't have to be something personal or anything like that. So I appreciate that. I feel like it can be laid back, because I'm just going to keep praising Dave. He is so good at what he does that we don't have to think about like what buttons are we pushing, and like is this going to sound okay or whatever, because he's going to just make it all go smoothly. And if something's wrong, he'll let us know, and we can just focus on having a fun discussion between the two of us.
Right. And then just a little side question. Did David write your theme song for your show?
Of course. Absolutely. Okay. In addition to everything else, he is an incredibly talented musician. Right. Jason is a filmmaker, and Dave has scored several of Jason's short films that he's made. So we're all about Dave's many talents.
Yeah, it's great. It's, again, a great dynamic. So it's interesting taking these movies a year at a time and like looking at it from a particular lens. What is it that what does it teach you?
Well, I think especially the further back you go, we've had a number of times where it's like this year is a sort of turning point for cinema. Or in a way, you can also see it as like this year is supposed to be a turning point for cinema, but turning points are gradual. But not everything is that yet. It's kind of a transition. And so you see the range of stuff, I think, in a year.
Yeah, interesting. The 1950s, also known as like one of the worst decades in film, as Tarantino has just recently said.
Yeah, so Tarantino says, and so Jason has been saying in our episodes, sadly. And I mean, our dumb little tagline is like every year is an awesome movie year, and I think that applies to the 50s. It applies to 2022. No year exists where there are no good movies, or the movies that were made in that year are not worth watching. And maybe you just have to search a little harder to find them, but they're always there.
So I got one more question for you, Josh. How do you decide on the topic? Like whether it's going to be, a box office thing or if it's going to be like a certain genre? How do you pick the topic for the movie of that year?
Well, we kind of established this in our first season. And we did talk about, I think the idea was to balance it with things that are set in stone, like what won Best Picture or what was the #1 movie at the box office. Like we don't choose that. That happened in that year and it's set. And then other things like our personal choices or a particular genre, like we always pick a documentary or a cult classic or whatever, but the specific categories we've kept pretty close to, and they've been fairly adaptable even as we've gone further back or further forward. I mean, there's some, we usually talk about a winner from the Sundance Film Festival, and the Sundance Film Festival didn't exist before 1984. So we've had to adjust to other film festivals, but like we also talk about the winner from the Cannes Film Festival, and that goes back into the 40s. So we can always find something there. And there's other, Venice and Berlin, those festivals all started in the 30s and 40s, or Berlin might've started in 1951, I forget. But yeah, so it's remained remarkably consistent for something that we just kind of came up with almost on the fly for the first season.
Okay, that's cool. I guess you'll never run out of topics or ideas or reasons to do a show, right?
I hope not. I hope not. I mean, there's always plenty of years, and even in a given year, we're only talking about 12 to 14 movies. I mean, that's a tiny sliver of how many movies are released in a year. We could always just come back.
And again, slipping into our topic, like Coen Brothers are very like you love them, you hate them a lot of the time because they cover so many topics and genres, and so not everything hits all the time. I think they hit more than they miss, but you know what I mean. They're so interesting that it's kind of, you never know what you're going to get with the Coen Brothers. But when you mentioned Fargo, again, I said Jonny, that's one of the movies that he had on his list. So I was like, yeah, let's definitely talk about that. So just as an introductory thing, Josh, what's your history with the Coen Brothers? What's your opinion on the Coen Brothers before we start talking about maybe Fargo?
I mean, I love the Coen Brothers, and I would, you're saying, sometimes you love them and sometimes you hate them. I don't think I ever hate them. I mean, there's certain Coen Brothers movies that I don't really like that much, but I don't think I could ever hate anything that they do. This was the first Coen Brothers movie I ever saw. I don't think I was really familiar with who they were per se at the time. Again, I would have been a teenager, and I'm not sure I saw this in the theater. I probably watched it at home, but of course it was a big deal, as we'll talk about, I'm sure, and all the Oscar nominations and all that. And I really liked it. But it was really overshadowed for me a couple years later by The Big Lebowski, where by that time I knew, like, oh, it's those guys who made Fargo, which was really good. I want to go see this. And that I went to see in the theater and just absolutely loved. And of course, at the time that came out, right, which I'm sure you guys talked about, it wasn't really a huge success and critics were not as into it necessarily. But yeah, that for me was like the one for a long time. And then I kind of slowly went back and saw the ones that I had not seen. And I still love The Big Lebowski as like a personal favorite, is one of my personal favorite movies ever. But I feel like Fargo might actually be the best movie that they've made. And I feel like I appreciate its craftsmanship even more every time I watch it.
Okay. And then I think, so we covered Raising Arizona, like I think episode 7 or something like that. And so that, I think Raising Arizona was my first exposure to the Coen Brothers. Jonny, do you remember that episode? What was your first exposure to the Coen Brothers?
Yeah, it was Raising Arizona, like you. And I remember you did not like Raising Arizona at first.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then when we talked about it during the episode, you had completely done a 180 and you called it their masterpiece. But anyway, do you want to hear my history of Fargo, or do we talk more about Raising Arizona?
So we covered all of that stuff, but like for Fargo, Jonny, what was your experience?
Well, like Josh, I did not see it in the theater. I know I saw it on probably on HBO or something late at night one night. And similar to Big Lebowski, I did not like it right away. Like it in a way, I kind of thought it was kind of boring because it was so slow going and just didn't really pick up. There were obviously those moments where it's kind of hard hitting with the violence, and there's some really interesting moments in the movie. But when I first saw it, I mean, like Josh, I was a little younger, and so I was just kind of like found myself getting bored. And it took a few years to go back and watch it again before I really appreciated what it was they were doing and what it was I was looking at. And now it's definitely on my top 3 Coen Brothers movies. Like it's up there. If it's not their best, it's one of their best for sure. But yeah, I mean, I like Josh, and like you, most likely, I love this movie.
Right. Well, me too. I didn't see it in a theater. I know, Josh, during the 90s, that's where Jonny and I kind of cut our teeth on movies and fell in love with all the different genres and directors and things like that. So, but maybe I wasn't old enough, or maybe because it was like an independent type film, it didn't come to like a local theater. But I remember seeing Fargo for the first time on VHS or DVD or whatever that was. But it was like, I knew who the Coen Brothers were. Obviously, they didn't have that big of an impact on me because obviously I didn't like Raising Arizona. But Fargo is one of those movies where, just like you, Johnny, it was slow and it was like kind of calm and quiet for the most part with those outbursts of violence. But every time that I watch the movie, I love it more. And I love it more, and I pick up more meaning and stuff and especially this time, I would specifically watch like the framing and things like that, which we'll definitely want to talk about, and the way the characters are kind of shown to us. But the way that the Fargo is, I say that the Coen Brothers tackle different genres, which is true, but every movie has a specific Coen Brothers flair. They're all the same, even though they're so different. I mean, Josh, do you agree with that, or am I making sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of it is tone, that whether the movies are more lighthearted, like Raising Arizona, or at least more sort of outwardly comedic, there's always this very wry, deadpan, intelligent sense of humor, even in the darkest Coen Brothers movies. Even in No Country for Old Men, there's humor. And I think that's a big part of it, is the really all the detail that they put into creating characters and settings, and again, like wildly varying settings, from the Midwest here to No Country for Old Men to the weird 1930s boardroom or whatever in the Hudsucker Proxy or something like that. All of them are very, very distinctive, even though they're very different. So yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say. People say this about all sorts of filmmakers, like, oh, I'd know if I watched a movie that they made, I could tell. And you probably can't really, but I feel like the Coens are filmmakers that would get people to say that. And I think weirdly too, it's both of them, because if you watch like Joel's movie, The Tragedy of Macbeth, it doesn't feel like a Coen Brothers movie. And I don't think it's just because William Shakespeare wrote the dialogue and they didn't write it. I think there's a distinctiveness that they have when they work together that wasn't quite there in that movie.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I think Tarantino is going to keep coming up a lot during the 90s, but Tarantino, whether his movies are based in the Old West, or whether they're based in Nazi Germany, or whether they're based in Los Angeles, they all sound the same. Like all the characters talk the same. Like obviously they have like the needle drops and Django Unchained that are totally like not like anachronistic, and have nothing to do with that time period. So Tarantino's movies, they all sound like Tarantino. Everybody sounds the same. But Fargo, even though Fargo and Big Lebowski and No Country for Old Men and Raising Arizona, Blood Simple, all these movies, they sound different, but they sound the same. I don't know how to explain it. Like you can definitely pick out like a Coen Brothers movie. I just don't know if it's the absurdist, like within a few minutes, like, is this a Coen Brothers movie? And you just kind of, you pick up on that vibe. I don't know what it is. They're very distinct as voices. And I haven't been able to see Tragedy of Macbeth yet. Visually, it looks stunning. It's so, hearing that, it's kind of disappointing to hear that it doesn't have that same kind of flair.
And I'm not saying that even as a negative. I'm just saying that there's a certain quality that the movies that Joel and Ethan have made, that those movies have, that Macbeth doesn't have, but it has a lot of other great qualities. It's a really good movie. Okay. It's a great Shakespeare adaptation. Like, the visuals that you're saying look enticing to you are amazing. Denzel Washington gives such a good performance. Like, it's a really good movie. It's just not a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then I guess to start up our Fargo conversation, diving into the movie, my question for both of you is, Tarantino's obviously a pastiche artist. Like, he picks and chooses from different genres, right? So watching Fargo, I had an interesting thought, because it seemed very Pulp Fiction-esque. It had like the violence that comes out of nowhere and the characters that are funny. But is Fargo Tarantino-esque, or is Tarantino Coen-esque? You know what I mean? What do you guys think the difference is?
Well, the Coens were working and making films before Tarantino.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like I'm sure Tarantino saw like Blood Simple, right? Mm-hmm. He famously saw everything. He worked in that video store. He watched every movie there was. So Yeah, I would tend to. I mean, maybe because I like the Coens more than I like Tarantino in a sort of aggregate sense.
Yeah.
Like I would give them the credit over him. I think, but as we were talking about, Pulp Fiction was so influential that like everything that came after it, if it had any sort of crime or violence element to it, it seemed like it was influenced by Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, even though Blood Simple has that same like Pulp Fiction-y feel of like the violence and kind of the meta kind of attitude. I just thought it was interesting watching Fargo thinking, this is all like Pulp Fiction. I was like, what? Why would you think that? Because obviously Tarantino came out after the Coen Brothers. I mean, Johnny, does that make sense? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I never thought that Fargo was like Pulp Fiction. I don't know where you got that from, really. I mean, yes, there is violence in it, but I never really thought that. Like I said, I thought it was kind of boring at first. But I would agree with Josh, and I think possibly Tarantino was affected or influenced by the Coen Brothers. But they're both very stylized directors. They both have this style and unique, visions. And so I think they're unique by themselves, but yet they do influence probably each other.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Again, I don't know where I came up with that connection. I just thought, why am I thinking that this is like very Pulp Fiction-esque? And so I just thought that was an interesting kind of idea. But Josh, for Fargo, what is it about Fargo that attracts you? What is it about the movie that you find so like endearing?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I think this is an incredibly well-constructed story that all the pieces of it fit so well together. And especially if you watch it multiple times, you can just really admire how all the characters' actions come back to them. All the things, everything that characters do has consequences that we see and that we understand, and that things tie together. I mean, they tie together neatly, but not in a way that feels contrived or fake. It feels like the natural consequences of the terrible decisions that these people are making. So, I mean, that to me, just as like on an entertainment level, is really, it's a suspense film. You always want to know what's going to happen. Where's the plot going? I cannot imagine finding this movie boring, because to me, there's just so much of that. And then there's so much humor, like we were just saying about the Coens. Like, this is a very funny movie. There are really...
Well, let me clarify. I don't think it's boring now.
Okay, all right.
It was boring when I first saw it.
Right.
No, that's fine. That's fair. But yeah, I mean, to me, one of the things about this movie, though, is that, like, I don't know, movies that get nominated for a bunch of Oscars, people who aren't movie buffs or whatever assume, oh, that must be some sort of stuffy thing that I wouldn't want to watch. And like, this movie is just super entertaining. It's really fun to watch. It's funny. And the characters are so well drawn. Marge Gunderson is one of the greatest characters in the history of cinema. She is just so warm and so real and so smart. She's a great detective. Marge Gunderson is as good a detective as like Sherlock Holmes. She figures everything out, and you can see those gears turning in her head. Frances McDormand's performance is so good. So, I mean, everything about this movie, I feel like there's nothing that I don't like about this movie.
Johnny, what about you? What is it like now about Fargo?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think they're master storytellers. And I have to give them credit for the script, because I really like their scripts. They're really good writers. And I want to say that what I've noticed is it seems to me that they're people who are good writers, they're probably really good observationists. They're good at seeing what people do, how they behave, and then kind of taking note and then putting that in their screenplays. And they're both from Minnesota, right? So, having made these movies in the past and then going back home, and they've already established they're good at writing, they're good at making these, funny, quirky stories. Then they go back home and they take what they know and they elevate it to a point where the speech patterns and, the accent and the Minnesota nice, that they kind of throw into the movie, the geez, and the, oh, real good, all that stuff is in there. And they write it in a way that there's this cadence and there's this rhythm, and it's almost like poetry. Listening to it now, like back then it was lost on me, but now it's like you hear them say these, just those sayings that they have, like the "oh, you betcha, yeah," all that stuff is in there, and it's just so pleasing to listen to. Like I say, it's like music or poetry. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that even the same phrase, that like "you betcha" or "oh yeah," can mean different things depending on sort of the inflection of it, whether it's "oh yeah" or "oh yeah."
Oh yeah. Oh, real good then, real good.
Yeah.
I also thought it was interesting because "don't you know" is one that they say a lot, but at the end, And again, I'm sorry to keep making this connection, but the thing with Pulp Fiction is that it's so like, it's just like all over the place, and it just gives you kind of a flavor of all these things, and you're like, well, what's the meaning of this? And then finally at the end, the scene that nails it is Jules talking to either Pumpkin or Honey Bunny. I can't remember which character Tim Roth is, but he's basically saying, I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd, right? That gives it the meaning. Like, this is a crap life, but I'm trying to find focus, and that gives that the meaning. And with Fargo, it kind of has the same thing where it's like, don't you know, and all the cadences. But at the end, when she's talking to, how do you pronounce his name? Gayar?
Yeah.
It's hard to pronounce. It's a funny name. But when she's got him in the car and she's like, there's more just for a little, why are you killing people just for money? There's more to life than that. Don't you know that? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's kind of a cool like way to kind of bring meaning to that. And I think what I love about this movie, and I love it more every time, is when you watch the movie the first time, yeah, it's funny. Like, they talk funny, right? And like Jerry Lundegaard, like freaking out. It's funny watching him do all this stuff. And so on the surface, it's a comedy with these sudden bursts of violence. And even the violent bits are funny in a way. But the Minnesota Nice, it's like a character. It's almost like a caricature. Like, Josh, if we're going back to Marge for a second, she seems like a caricature. Like, she's funny, like she talks in this, she's, oh yeah, like, and all this stuff. But she has that, like you said, she's a great detective. Like, she has moments where she stops and it's like she stops putting on that false front, especially when she's talking to Jerry, and she's like, you can see her like zeroing in, like, and making it work. And so that's what I love about her character, is like, and everybody, they seem like a caricature at first, but they're human. Like, there's so many human moments in this. Like, Johnny, you're talking about it being observational, and there's all these throwaway bits that don't seem necessary. Like the part where Carl and Gay are like, they're with the two girls, they're having sex in the hotel room, and it's like so over the top and it's comedic, and then it fades out and it cuts and they're just sitting up watching the Tonight Show. That's a very human moment. The part where Marge and Norm are talking at the breakfast table, and she gets up and you see her walk outside, and she comes back in, she's like, hon, like, what, the prowler needs a jump. You know, it's that kind of, those human moments are what sell the movie for me. A lot like, you know, the white kind of barren landscape having all of a sudden this, like, being interrupted by bright or dark reds of the blood. It's like so interrupt. So there's always these little moments that intrude on, like, the mundanity or the, like, the violence and the terrible goings on. I was listening to the movie on my earphones, and there's the part where Proudfoot is like whipping Carl with his belt, and they're saying the F word like over and over again, to the point where my wife was like, she could hear my earphones last night, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, because they're saying it so much. And then at the end, like, when it's you're with Marge and she's talking to Gayar or whatever, and my wife asked again, are they still saying the F word? And I was like, no, we're with a good character. We're with a good moral character right now, so there's not going to be any F words. I just thought that there's a great kind of dichotomy and like different feel to the characters, and they're just, it's so, I don't know, lived in, so real. I mean, Josh, what word would you use to describe that kind of humanness?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very genuine. And I think those little details make a huge difference. I mean, a couple things that you mentioned there, the part where Marge comes back inside and tells her husband the prowler needs a jump. It's the prowler needs a jump again. And just that gives you a sense of what their routine is, that this is this old police car that obviously doesn't start very well. And probably every few days, Norm has to go out there and hook up the cables to give it a jump. And that's what their life is. And in terms of the language, the worst thing that Jerry Lundegaard's son can do is to say the F word. That's the one time when both Jerry and the mother suddenly break that Minnesota Nice for 1 second. Are like, oh no, you don't say that language. Watch the language.
And it's the moment where they're in sync with each other. Like that's the only time where Gene, I think is her name, or Jerry and Gene are in sync with each other. Yeah, it's interesting. Johnny, what were you gonna?
Oh, I was just going to say that going along with like the script, and we talked about this in the Big Lebowski episode, they purposely put in all the dudes and the mans and the, you know, all that stuff was in there, and all the breaks and the uhs and all that stuff. Same thing with this one. Like all the you knows and you betches and oh yeahs, they're all in there on purpose. And even so much so that when Peter Stormare was doing the scene in the car, when he first says, we go to Pancake's house, he didn't say pancakes in his first take, he said pancake. And so they were like, no. What'd you say? You say pancakes or pancake? It's pancakes. So he was like, that's how specific and how, detailed they were about their scripts. And the thing is, when you're the author of the script, you know it by heart. I mean, you see that thing, you see it on paper, you read over it, you go through it. So you know exactly what it's supposed to be. And so when someone says it wrong, you always go, huh, that wasn't right. And like, do that again. And so I appreciate the fact that they were so in tune with their script that they wrote. And they had this, like I say, it was like music or like poetry. And so they knew what was supposed to be. And if you, veer away from that, they'll correct you.
Right. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that clip, Johnny, because seeing Peter Stormare is so weird. Like in every movie that he's in, he's so odd. That during Josh, I don't know if you've seen that interview, but him talking just normal weirded me out even more than him acting. I'm like, wait, well, Peter Stormare is a normal guy. I just thought that was that was really funny. But like, so before I want to talk about the performances, obviously, but before we get into that, what's so interesting about this movie is it seems so easy. Like it doesn't seem like the Coens with their script, John, like you just talked about, it doesn't seem like they're reaching for anything. It doesn't seem like they're, Christopher Nolaning it, when they're like trying to be so obvious with their dialogue. You have to listen and you have to pay attention. There's so many nuances, and it just seems, it's as a writer, it's frustrating because it seems so easy. I'm like, how do they write like this? Like they got so many movies. How do they do this and make it seem so easy? And I don't know, like what
I can kind of answer that if you don't mind. Can I answer that? Because I was watching a documentary about it, and what they were saying was that they develop the character first, and any good writer will do that. And when you know the character, it just happens. It just comes out. You know what they're going to say. You know how they're going to say it. You don't have to really work for it. So first, you just develop the character, and each one of those characters is very well developed. And so I can only assume that that's why it was so easy for them to write this. Why it seems like it was so easy for them to write this.
Right, Josh, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, as a writer, I'm sure you're aware that like it's never really easy. It's really hard to make it sound like it was easy, right? Yeah. The effect that you have watching the movie, thinking, "Wow, it seems so easy. It seems so effortless," required, I'm sure, a huge amount of effort on the part of the Coens as they were writing the script. But that's their talent, that they can do that. And Johnny, like you're saying, that they can put every little filler word in the script and know exactly where it's supposed to go, and know that if the actor doesn't say it, it won't be right, and that needs to be done. And all of those details, I'm sure, take a lot of effort and a lot of refinement. And the result is characters who sound like they've just spontaneously said exactly what's on their mind.
Yeah, I mean, going with that, I mean, different scenes making it seem so effortless. And again, the Coen Brothers, which we talked about before, is like all their side characters seem alive. The couples in this movie just seem like they have a history together, even without saying anything. That's hard to do. Or with the writing wise, if you're looking at superfluous stuff, I know that the Mike Yanagita scene gets criticized a lot because people are like, what's the point of this? But it's funny because if you're paying attention again, like she goes to see him and he spins this tale that she believes. And later when you find out that, oh, it's all a lie, and he's not really set in his mind isn't working. So she fell for it. She became gullible. And what's great about that is it leads her. And if you watch the movie, you can see it in her face. I'm not sure why people miss this. You can see it in her face, and she's like, well, if he was lying to me, what about this Lundegaard guy? And she goes back and she talks to him and she digs deep. And that's, again, she's a great detective. I mean, what do you both think about that? Did you, Josh, and then I'll ask Johnny, when you saw that Yanagita scene, did you think there was a point to it? Or did you think it was superfluous? Like a lot of people seem to.
I feel like maybe the first time I saw this movie, I did think it was superfluous. And I agree with you, though, that it's important for the reason that you cited, because it does provide a catalyst for her to understand something about the case, but it's also really revealing about her character. And this is not a kind of mystery movie that's just about finding out who done it or whatever, or putting clues together or something like that. This is a character study about these people. And it shows a lot about Marge's character, that is great as that marriage is that she has with Norm. And it is great. She kind of wants to meet Mike Yanagita. She gets a little dolled up for that meeting. And you can see over the course of it, even if she believes him about his dead wife, that she's like, wait a minute, this I made a mistake here,
Yeah.
or this is not what I really had hoped for. Or maybe she did hope for it. Maybe in her mind, the idea of this guy from her past being into her was exciting. And then confronted face to face with the reality of it, it was no longer exciting. And all of these things you can get about her character from watching that scene, which is also a very funny scene.
Yeah.
And that's not to be discounted either.
Right, without spelling it out for you, right? You kind of have to
Yes.
pick that up yourself. Johnny, what do you think about the Yanagita scene? Is that something that
Well, I do like that scene now, but I didn't like it back then. I remember just not liking that character and thinking, why is she dealing with this guy? Why even bother? You know what I mean? Like, this is just stupid. And I always would fast forward that scene. But I do agree that it's funny. And I really like the aftermath where she realizes the truth, and then she's driving back and she's getting some food at, a fast food takeout place.
Parties.
You see her thinking, like in the car, and you know what she's thinking about. She's thinking, that guy lied to me, and maybe Lundegaard lied to me. And so I understand the importance of it, and I think it's great that it's in there.
Yeah, the investigative process is there. Again, it plays out with food. I mean, one of the notes I have here is like, these eating sounds sound disgusting. Like you can hear everybody eating. But if we're going back to like watching things, and I think it's, you watch the Yanagita scene, you listen to the Minnesota Nice, and you pick up on the surface level stuff. But the sign of a great movie is when you go back and you watch it again, you pick up on different meanings and the different things that are just under that surface. And then before we talk about the performances, I wanted to talk about Deakins' cinematography just really quick, because it does tie in with the characters and the performances. When you go back, and again, like I said, I watched it from the lens of how the framing was working. And it's interesting because, like I said before, about the couples, right? The framing tells you that, like Marge and Norm, they are always shot together. When they're in a scene together, they're in the same shot together, to the point where her deputy comes in and is talking, like Norm doesn't even acknowledge, like he talks to him, but the shot is framed so that he's kind of facing in Marge's direction, and that tells you where his priorities are, right? He's focused on her, but they're very warm scenes because they're always together. You contrast that with the Jerry and Gene scenes, where there's a part where he's talking to Wade, and they're in the foreground, but then you see Gene blurred in the background. They're almost never in the same shot, except for that part, Josh, like you talked about, when the kid uses the F word. That's the only time that they're connected, right? When Jerry's talking to people, he talks to people and they never face him. It's like they hardly ever look at him face on. They're always have their backs to them, or they're always talking to the side, or they never look him right in the face. They're ignoring him. That's interesting. I like that the Carl and the Gayar characters, like they're also shot in oneers. Like they're never, aside from the part where they're watching Gene, like with the bag over her head, like kind of stumble through the snow. That's like a connected moment. But I think they show them together or at the table in the Fargo bar. Because they're seem like a team, but then the more you get to know them, they're separated because they're never shot. The longer the movie goes, they're never shown in the same shot together, or to the point where, like we talked about with Mike, when he tries and enter the frame with Marge, she shoos him off, so he goes back, and so they are shot as oneers. And so I just thought that was really interesting. Like you get this warmth from the Marge and Norm scenes. And I was wondering why, until I noticed that, yes, they're always shot in they're framed in the same shot together. I just thought that was really, really an interesting, like, visual language. Is that something, like, Josh, that you noticed or have noticed before?
I mean, not as much maybe as you did this time. Maybe, like you said, you were kind of trying to look for that. But as you're talking about it, I was thinking also of the shot that we were talking about before, the scene where Marge has to come back inside and ask for a jump, and they're having breakfast together, and she gets up and says, okay, it's time to go. And the camera stays in place as she walks out. And we see him sitting at the breakfast table the whole time as she's getting ready. She walks out, she leaves the door, is out there for a moment and comes back in. And it's all a single take shot. And they're always in that frame together. They're there, even though they're apparently going to be separated now, and then they come back together, but the frame stays with both of them in it for that entire scene.
Yeah. Johnny, is that something that you noticed? Ever watching?
I did notice that, and I think that's on purpose, obviously. I think that's what grounds the movie, and I know they wanted to have that couple, Marge and Norm, kind of be the safe haven. You can go back to these guys; they're the ones that love each other. They're the they're the rural America or whatever. they're just like home. So you want to feel like they're, you know, a team, they're together. And so whenever the violence kicks in and you go back to their scenes, it's almost like you're at home again and you can kind of relax. I think that was the point.
Yeah, there's definitely a stark contrast. Again, like we talked about, like the red interfering with the white, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, just so interesting, like a bit from a visual language kind of standpoint there. But performance-wise, I mean, obviously we got to talk about McDormand, talk about Macy. I mean, Jonny, take the lead on this. What performances did you want to kind of signal?
Well, obviously William H. Macy, we have to talk about. Let's talk about him first, because I think this was the part he was born to play, and he said that himself, that this is the part he was born to play. I know all actors say that. Like, I know Bryan Cranston talked about, you know, Walter White being the part he was born to play, and I think that's true to some point. But when William H. Macy was going to the audition, he was actually called to audition for the State Trooper, and so he read for that part, you know, and the Coens were like, yeah, that was real good. Why don't you try reading for Lundegaard? So he'd go out in the foyer, practice Lundegaard, come back in, and then read it, and they'd be like, yeah, that's real good, real good. And so they say, why don't you take it home tonight and work on it and come back tomorrow? So he came back the next day after like staying up all night working on it. He came back and they're like, yeah, that was real good, real good. And they never called him back. And so he didn't ever get a response. He knew they liked him, but they never got him a call. So then he actually went to New York, where they're still auditioning people for Jerry Lundegaard. He flew out on his own dime, went to New York, and kind of butted in line and went in the room and read for it again. And they're like, okay, you can have it. So, I mean, yes, it's probably the part he was born to play, because I say he was phenomenal. Like, he had such different, you know, such a layered performance that, I mean, I watched it once last night, and then I was over, I watched it again just because I wanted to see all those different nuances, and they're there, and it's so layered and so well done.
Yeah, Josh, what do you think about Macy?
Yeah, he's fantastic, and I think the layers are key. Like you're talking about that Minnesota nice that maybe gets you to underestimate Marge and not realize how great she is at police work, how great a detective she is. And the surface is there with Jerry too, but what's under that surface is that rage, you know, is that really the black hole of neediness and resentment that he's got. And William H. Macy gives you all that, even in the scenes where he's being the nicest or the fake nicest. And so you can always see those layers. And I feel like even early on in the movie, you can tell this is no good guy. This guy is bad news right from the start. And not just because he's trying to plan a crime. He's not a sympathetic guy put in a bad position. He is a bad guy.
Yeah. And I love that he still tries to bring back that Minnesota nice. Like, even after, like, you know, scraping the windshield and he gets all pissed off and throws it down, then he stops, picks it up, brushes it off, and goes back to work. You know what I mean? I love that.
Yeah.
With the office, where he slams the desk down. He slams the whole thing. I would have loved to see him stop and clean that up too, but they cut away. So
yeah. I wrote down that it's interesting that whenever has that Minnesota nice, but whenever he's pushed, like, he loses it like really easy. Like he can't keep up that front. So I just thought that was a very kind of fun performance. The other thing too is it mirrors like the characters, like they mirror each other. Like if he's got that Minnesota nice, that kind of, Josh, like you talked about, like he's got that rage, right? It's the same thing with Marge. She's got the Minnesota nice, but underneath she's a great detective. When she really barrels down, like she's great, like Sherlock Holmes. So that does hide that. It's the same thing with he also, the Jerry character also mirrors the Carl character, how nobody respects Carl. And I think Carl kind of strikes back. Like he acts out like Jerry does, except he actually gets things done. Like he shoots, obviously, Wade or things like that. So he does have that same kind of rage, but instead of, like, again, Jerry never accomplishes anything. Like, he's all bluster and he loses it, but it never leads anywhere. And Carl's like the opposite of that. So he does get things done. So yeah, I like that mirroring. And again, Macy, I agree with you. Like, I think this is the only movie he was nominated for an Oscar for, which sounds strange because I think Macy's a great actor, and he does kind of bring those same nuances to everything he does. And so it's kind of weird hearing that.
I always feel bad for this character too, because he tries so hard. He tries so hard to the whole movie, but he never succeeds. And it's so hard to watch him fail, but he tries, never gives up. So, you know, I can appreciate him never giving up.
Yeah. And the cinematography too, what is it, the famous shot of him after he finds out that the deal that he's trying to broker with Wade and his partner is falling through, and it's a shot of Jerry wading into the parking lot. It's just his car and the white everywhere, and it shows his isolation. Or the part where he's on the phone with that the GMC guy or whatever about the bin numbers, and the way that the blinds of the window are framed so like they're vertical and they look like prison bars because they're and then the camera like zooms in, and so it like increases that claustrophobia, like kind of traps him. So that ties him with that character, Janet. And again, it's all character based. It's not just Macy doing a great acting job. It's also the filmmaking, the writing, kind of tying with that. But yeah, okay. So who next we want to talk about?
Well, we kind of talked about Frances McDormand already. I think we should talk about Steve Buscemi.
Okay. What do you think of Steve Buscemi as Carl?
Well, I think he's great. I think it's probably one of the best things he's done. I mean, I like him in, Reservoir Dogs and other things. I mean, have you guys seen Boardwalk Empire? I think he's great in that too. But I mean, again, kind of like William H. Macy, this is one of the parts he was born to play. And I have seen Trees Lounge, by the way, Josh, so you can tell. Is it
Jason?
Jason.
Yeah, so Jason. I like that movie. I think it was a good directorial effort on Buscemi's part. But anyway, I think he's great. I mean, I do think there were some moments where I kind of saw through his performance, but I don't want to be too critical because the parts where he nails it, he really nails it.
Yeah, I think it's not as layered a character maybe as Jerry or Marge. I mean, it's not as central a character, but he is great at that. And the sort of, he is impotent in his rage as well a lot of the time. You're saying that Jerry never gets anything done and Carl does, but not as much as he would like or intends to, right? I mean, he is more decisive, but especially with Gayar, or however you pronounce the name of Peter Stormare's character, like he threatens him and he berates him and he commands him, and none of it works at all, is completely ineffective. That guy will not listen to a single thing that he says at all, and he completely fails to impart anything to him, and of course ends up getting murdered at the end. But I agree that Steve Buscemi is great, and also a good sport to play a character that two outside observers describe as funny looking.
And when they say funny looking, you're like, yeah, that's Buscemi.
Right. But
we all like him.
Nobody wants to be described as funny looking. That's not anything that anybody wants other people to think about them. Kind of way. Yeah.
But I think Buscemi even knows, like he knows his limitation, like he knows what he looks like. And so it's very like, I don't know, endearing that he kind of plays into that. He knows kind of his place. But yeah. Do we want to talk about Stormare at all? Again, I wrote down, is he supposed to be funny or scary? Because I'm more scared by him than anything.
Yeah, he is scary, but also funny. I mean, I feel like that applies to so much about this movie, is that it's both. And that's one of the great things about the Coens.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice that Shep vouched for Gers, but he didn't vouch for Carl? And Gers the one who killed 5 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shep doesn't seem like he has great judgment though, does he?
No, not at all. That scene, again, we mentioned it before, where he comes in and he's beating the crap. I was like, I forgot that happened. Like I had no idea. But talking about mirroring, you're talking about the Mike scene kind of setting off Marge. The scene where Proudfoot comes in and beats Carl up, that kind of sets Carl's rage off. Like, I'm done with this. And so he pushes forward with that scheme. Again, there's so many mirrors here. I also wrote down, so you see when they kill the deputy the first time, and then that couple passes by, and then they crash their car, and the kid runs and tries to run away, and Gayar shoots him. That's mirrored later, where Marge comes in and sees Gayar shoving Carl into the wood chipper, and then he tries to run away, and Marge takes a shot at him. I thought that was interesting. When you see the shot of Jerry coming in, carting the Cutlass Sierra around, that's mirrored later when the procession of squad cars comes and picks up the bodies of Jean and what's left of Carl, obviously. So there's a lot of mirroring here, and again, it's so subtle. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, it just seems so easy that it's never like brightly lit. You never have like an arrow pointed at what you're supposed to be. But on this 6th, 7th watch of the movie, I was like, oh yeah, that mirrors that. I was just kind of surprised that I kept picking up on things. And again, just to go back to McDormand, I know we've talked about her, but would you guys agree that she's the heart of the movie? I think we've kind of mentioned that. Josh, what do you think? Is she's the moral center, right?
Well, yeah, she's the moral center, but not in a like heavy-handed, like, look at how good this person is and look at how bad these other people are. It's just, it's that sense of effortlessness. Like, that's just who she is. And she's not self-righteous about it. She doesn't necessarily see herself above other people. Even that great scene at the end where she's talking to Gayar, like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? It's not even like, why are you doing this? Like, you're an idiot and I'm smarter than you. It's like, genuinely, I want to understand your motivations in life. Like, please tell me, what is your deal? So, yeah, I think she is the moral center, but she's just so likable as a person. She's someone that you want to spend time with, that you want to be around, because she is friendly and she's smart, and she will do a favor for you. She'll pick up some worms at the store for you without even being asked, because that's just the kind of person that she is.
Well, the way that she's so nonplussed about the triple murder that she stumbles upon, like, and you think like when she's almost ready to throw, you think that that's what's affecting her, but she's like, nope, just my morning sickness, like that passed. It's just, there's so much mundanity in the movie it's not so much, I guess not so much mundane, it's just human. It's like, when I say mundane, like when you go to see a movie, you want to see spectacle, right? You want to see things that you wouldn't normally see. But when you see stuff that you see and you live in everyday life, I think we can describe that as mundane, when it's just, that's life. That's what it should be. I just think that McDormand has an equally strong performance with Macy, just as being able to ground this whole movie and kind of be like the gravity of the movie in a way. I just thought that was very interesting. But is there anything else that we haven't talked about with Fargo that we need to kind of?
I would say the violence, because the violence is so well, some of them are anyway. Some violent scenes are really just graphic. The very first time when Gare grabs the cop and puts a bullet in his head, like, it's funny to me because Buscemi was talking about how he's, a fountain of conversation. That's a geyser. And then when the cop's head explodes, it's a geyser of blood that comes out of his head. And it's always really shocking. When I first saw that, it really did shock me. And I was like, wow. And I think that's what made me kind of like take notice and kind of, go, what's going on here? I love that scene, even though it's really graphic. I think it's really well done, how they were able to get that, blood to shoot out like that. And then also his reaction to it, like, whoa, daddy, like that's a great reaction to having something like that just happen right in front of you. Yeah. So unexpectedly.
Anything you wanted to add, Josh? Anything we haven't talked about?
I mean, I'm sure there's many more things and little nuances of this movie, but I feel like we've hit all the important aspects of it, really. And I'm with you, Johnny, on the violence. Like, it is shocking, and it's good that it's shocking, because you're maybe lulled into like, oh, these quirky people, and like, no, but also there's some like real danger here and some serious consequences. And especially that scene with the cop and his whoa, daddy. And the other thing about that I sort of winced at is like toward the end of the film, when Carl has been shot like along the jaw, I guess, kind of by Wade. And he's got like some kind of napkin on it or something like that. And he peels it off to replace it. And you can just feel how that would be like stuck and encrusted there and how much that would hurt.
And by the way, I love that scene after that where he has to get out and go bury the money. And then he falls in the snow, both going to bury it and leaving from burying it. He falls each time. It makes me laugh every time he falls down. And also when he looks both ways and it just goes on forever, and there's like no end in sight, and it's all just this white vastness, and he has to kind of put a marker in. Now, before we go any further, have you guys seen the TV show?
Yes.
Have you, Dan?
I haven't yet. I know we've talked about it before.
All right. Well, I won't spoil it for Darin then, but there is a tie-in to the TV show with the movie, and it's a question I had for years.
Is it about the money? About the money, right? I think I know this.
I always wondered what happened to the money. Who found the money? And the TV show answers that question, and it's great.
Yeah, and I think the TV show is good and not nearly as good as the movie, and the different seasons, it's uneven, the different seasons. But I feel like the question of who gets the money is unanswered for a reason. And the idea is that, like, probably no one gets the money. No one who put their lives on the line for this money certainly gets the money.
Yeah.
And it's maybe just somebody random. But so I feel like it's almost better to leave that question open. And that was a little moment in the TV show that was like, I don't know, to me, it was probably just sort of not needed. But especially the first season of the TV show, maybe they were feeling more obligated to have references and Easter eggs or whatever. Before it really stood on its own in the later seasons. But have you guys seen Kimiko the Treasure Hunter, the Zellner Brothers film?
That was my next topic I wanted to talk about, because Johnny, I don't know if, like, there are people, because the movie starts out with this is based on a true story. People actually think that there's money buried out there. So I think it's either an urban legend or they have a couple instances of people actually going and trying to find this money. But yeah, tell us about that movie there, Josh.
Well, yeah, that is based on one of those stories where a woman from Japan supposedly flew all the way to Minnesota to look for this because she thought it was true, and she died of exposure. And I just reading Wikipedia, it says that actually that part of it was kind of an urban legend, and it was not, she wasn't really looking for the money, it was a suicide or something like that. But Kimiko the Treasure Hunter takes that and fictionalizes it, and is a story about a woman who actually does travel to look for the money and the sort of misadventures. And the Zellner brothers are, I mean, in a way like the Coen brothers, in that they have a very specific tone. Their stuff is much more like dry and understated, maybe to the point of being inert at times. I think I like some of their movies. I love a movie called Damsel that they made, a Western kind of movie. I was less into Kimiko, but it's been a long time since I saw it.
Yeah, I just think that it's taken on a life of its own. Of like just because they lied and said that it was based on a true story, when it's it's
I always thought it was a true story. I didn't know that it wasn't.
Yeah, so that's definitely funny. So that's a great. So again, tying it back with awesome movie year, just if we were to kind of give our final thoughts, Josh, like if you were to give this out of a score of 5 dismembered Carl limbs, like what would you give Fargo? And then we'll give our ratings as well.
Well, I mean, I rated it on Letterboxd, I think 4.5 out of 5, and I'm a pretty tough grader on stars and stuff like that. So something that gets a 4.5 out of 5 from me is like one of my favorite movies of all time. So that is the rating that I would give you on this. And I couldn't even tell you necessarily something that's keeps it from being a full 5 stars, and maybe it should be, but that's my gut on it. 4.5 out of 5.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I think actually no, I'm still formulating my thoughts a little bit. Johnny, what about you? How many dismembered Carl limbs would you give it out of 5?
Well, out of 5, probably 5 out of 5. And my opinion is changed over the years, obviously. And I love it more and more, just like you guys. The more I watch it, the more I love it. In fact, there's been many times where it's come on TV and I'll stop and watch it, and my wife will walk in and, oh, you're watching this again? But like, I can't not watch it. If it's on TV, I have to watch it. And so I appreciate it on all levels: the filmmaking, the directing, the acting, the writing. I think it's fantastic. And I can go watch it right now. And I probably will. But anyway, 5 out of 5 for sure.
It's funny because when you sit down to watch these movies, it's like, I don't know if I have 2.5 hours to spend. And when it was like, this is only 98 minutes, it's like, yeah, I'll sit and watch this. Like, I've got no problem there. So with me, I think I would also give it a 5. Josh, it's like when a movie first comes out, I can't just give it a 5 or a top score right when I see it, because I have to let it like fester and like let it mold in my brain. But since this has been out since 1996, right, I've had time to think about it. And every time I watch it, I've learned something new from it. And like I said, that's just the sign of a great movie. But yeah, I mean, we've covered kind of some topics. And then Josh, I kind of, again, gave you some homework and stuff like that. But your topic was like Coen Brothers movies. What was your top? What did you want to talk about with them?
Well, I mean, I feel like we've talked a lot about this already, about their filmography as a whole. I mean, my idea was, is this the best Coen Brothers movie? And if not, what is the best Coen Brothers movie, or what makes it the best compared to some of their other films? So, I mean, I think, like I said, for me personally, I love The Big Lebowski so much. That is my favorite Coen Brothers movie. It's one of my favorite movies ever. It's so much fun to watch. That's the kind of thing I can watch over and over. And I'm the kind of person who rarely watches movies more than once. So to say that I could watch something over and over is a big compliment. but this to me might be their most well-constructed film. I think the only other movie that rivals this one, I think for me, is No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, Johnny, did you have anything?
Yeah, if I had to pick my favorite Coen Brothers movie, it'd be Raised in Arizona. And we talked about that in that episode, but Raised in Arizona is just so funny and it's so well done. But my next would be Fargo. Okay. And then next after that would be The Big Lebowski. And then next after that would be The Hudsucker Proxy. Huh. And then next would be No Country for Old Men.
Okay. So Josh, you had Big Lebowski, Fargo, No Country for Old Men. Do you have another two favorites that we have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking here, and some of these I haven't seen in a really long time, so I'm just sort of trying to draw on my memory here. But I think the next two I might pick would be Miller's Crossing and A Serious Man. Okay. But that's just instinct. Both, I think I gravitate more to the dark. I actually, again, I haven't seen them in a really long time, but I wasn't a huge fan of either Raising Arizona or Hudsucker Proxy, which are more of the sort of antic comedy lens. Although I do like Burn After Reading a lot, which is also that tone. So, but that's my gut feeling right now is to pick those two. Is A Serious Man, and what did I just said? And what did I say? What did I literally just say 2 seconds ago? Yes, Miller's Crossing. Yeah.
Well, if we were to do like top 5 too, I think like Raising Arizona and No Country for Old Men are the ones that I kind of lobby between. I just think it's you talked about, Josh, like the silly kind of comedic versus like the serious like drama, like really well done. And I think it ties into with Fargo. It's like Marge can't explain, she can't make sense of it. And it's the same thing with the Tommy Lee Jones character in No Country for Old Men. I know that throws a lot of people off, but he can't make sense of it. I think that's the point of that movie too, even though we kind of want to see the showdown between Brolin's character and Chigurh. Dang it, I can't remember the actor's name.
Javier Bardem.
Bardem, right. Gosh dang it, I love him. But we kind of want that showdown. We don't get it. And that's what I love about that movie is it doesn't give you what you expect and what you want. It's something deeper. And then Fargo, I think, would definitely be my number 3. And then Miller's Crossing after that. And I think after our recent watch of Big Lebowski, I think that's going to round out my 5. I just think
I gotta mention Oh Brother Where Art Thou too.
That's a funny one. Yeah. And that's one that kind of builds. And I like the structure of it being kind of like after the Odyssey and Homer and things like that, which I thought was great. So yeah, that's a great top 5. And you can we talked about earlier, Josh, how we've never hated a movie. Johnny and I just talked about Man Who Wasn't There. That one left me cold. Like I didn't know what to think of it, but I didn't dislike that one as much as say like The Lady Killers or Intolerable Cruelty, which the problem with Intolerable Cruelty is anybody on the face of the planet could have made that movie. It's like, why are the Coen brothers making this movie? And there's no real, it just seems anonymous, which I don't think that you want maybe from a Coen brothers movie. You want that Coen brothers experience, I think. So I don't know, as to close this out, I mean, what, I final word on the Coen brothers, Josh, I mean, what do you think? Why are they such formative filmmakers, especially in the 90s?
I mean, I think it is that mix of, and it's something that Tarantino does too, is that mix of humor and violence, is movies that can straddle multiple genres within the movie, and that the Coen brothers movies are less defined as being comedies or thrillers or dramas than they're just defined by being Coen brothers movies. And I think that that's something that Tarantino also has. So I think that is, and just the way that they're in command of so many aspects. They're great writers and they're great directors of actors and they're great visual stylists. And like, it's hard to find people who do all that. I mean, they edit their own films, I mean, how many directors as like Steven Soderbergh is one that comes to mind who does that. But especially in mainstream Hollywood, that never happens. But they're really good at it. It's not like they edit their own films because they have too much power and no one will tell them no. They're really good editors too. So I think that is the thing, is that there's such a total package element to them that not a lot of filmmakers have.
You're always going to get something from them.
Yes.
I think that's, except for Intolerable Cruelty.
I like Intolerable Cruelty, actually. It's again a long time, but I like it more than The Lady Killers. Okay. I think is the closest to one where I would say like maybe I really did not get anything out of that one.
Yeah, I think Intolerable Cruel. I think Johnny and I agree too. That one's above the Lady Killers at least. At least there's some entertaining parts in there. But yeah. So again, that's man, when you mentioned Fargo, I was like, this is going to be a great conversation. It seemed like you were enthusiastic about it. Johnny was enthusiastic about it. I was like, I want to watch Fargo again. Let's do this. And so just I had a great time. I appreciate you coming on here, Josh. I appreciate like you bringing that, again, your awesome movie, your flavor to our podcast. So again, I couldn't be more grateful. Maybe we'll talk about Trees Lounge in the future, but like if you could tell us, like, again, where can we find you on social media? I know you got your bleeding, your what's the name of your blog?
Oh, well, you can, the blog is called Signal Bleed, which is also
right.
my Twitter handle. You can find me at Signal Bleed on Twitter and at Signal Bleed on Letterboxd. The blog is at joshbellhateseverything.com, and there's not a lot of content. I mean, there is a lot of content there, but there's not a lot of recent content there. But it probably has some things that I've written about the Coen Brothers over the years, but I'm more active on Twitter and on Letterboxd, also at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook. And if you want to check out Awesome Movie Year, we are at awesomemovieyear.com, at Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, although I don't think we've literally posted one single time on Instagram, but it does exist. And at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. So hopefully people will give us a shot. We've talked about, like you said, we talked about No Country for Old Men. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the Coen Brothers and a lot of these 90s movies that you guys have talked about, we are a big 90s podcast. And because it was such a formative time for both Jason and myself, getting into movies and forming our tastes and whatever, we keep coming back to that decade.
Yeah, and that's what we're finding too. I know we talked about earlier about like how you like formulate your seasons, and Johnny and I are having just so much fun that we keep having conversations about, well, how long is a season? Can it be 50 episodes? Can it be 60 episodes? Why not? Sure. We'll just keep going as long as it's great. But again, I think we talked about it before we started recording that your format for Awesome Movie Year doesn't maybe allow like guests to come on, but we'd love to have you back on and talk about anything.
I'd be happy to return, and you know, you never know when things might change with Awesome Movie Year, and we're trying to keep it open. But yeah, we don't have guest spots usually, or at least not very often, but I'm always available to return if you guys wanted to have me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So again, everybody check out Awesome Movie Year. Great conversations over there. Great kind of laid back attitude. Again, we can lay it on David, but I really lay it on you and Jason. Like, you just got such a good rapport, and you're able just to, like I said, you disagree, but we get a viewpoint of what these movies mean to you. And I think that's really, really important from a podcast. And you guys capture that perfectly. So again, awesome podcast, awesome movie years, and awesome podcast. That's my review of your.
Thank you. We'll take it. All right.
Okay. Awesome. So again, thank you for coming on. And Johnny and I will be right back.
Mr. Mora? Yeah. Officer Olson? Yeah. Righto. Well, so I'm tending bar down there at Eklund and Swedlin's last Tuesday, and this little guy's drinking, and he says, so where can a guy find some action? I'm going crazy out there at the lake. And I says, what kind of action? And he says, woman action. What do I look like? And I says, well, what do I look like? I don't arrange that kind of thing. And he says, but I'm going crazy out there at the lake. And I says, yeah, but this ain't that kind of place. Uh-huh. He says, oh, so I get it. So you think I'm some kind of jerk for asking, only you don't use the word jerk. I understand. Then he calls me a jerk, says last guy thought he's a jerk is dead now. So I don't say nothing. He says, what do you think about that? And I says, well, that don't sound like too good a deal for him then. You got that right. Yeah, he says, yeah, that guy's dead, and I don't mean of old age. And then he says, geez, I'm going crazy out there at the lake. White Bear Lake? Yeah, well, at Eklund and Swedlin, that's closer to Moose Lake, so I made that assumption. Oh, sure. Anyway, he's drinking at the bar, so I don't think a whole great deal of it. But then Mrs. Mora, she heard about the homicides down here and thought I should call it in, so I called it in. End of story.
Okay, welcome back. Again, big thank you to Josh Bell of Awesome Movie Year. Check out that podcast if you haven't yet. I believe since they're covering 1953 as of this debut, as of us dropping this episode, they will have covered some a Yashizuru Ozu movie, Tokyo Story. They also covered a Fellini movie, Evie Toloni, I believe that's how you pronounce it. So they cover everything. It's not just like the 2000s or the 90s. When they pick a year, they really go for it. And they have just a set range of episodes that they choose. So
that's cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so you get a full flavor of everything, not just one particular thing. So yeah, absolutely check them out. We normally do an outro topic, but I think with Josh, we just kind of fell into just doing a top 5. Usually we do a top 3, but we did a top 5 Coen Brothers movies. I think that was fun.
Yeah, but I've had time to think about it, and I want to change my list.
Okay, what was yours?
Do a quick rundown.
Okay.
I want to say Raising Arizona is number 1.
Oh, really? Okay.
Fargo is number 2.
Okay.
Big Lebowski number 3. I think that's the same, right?
Yeah.
I haven't changed since then. But I want to say The Hudsucker Proxy is number 4.
Ooh.
And instead of No Country for Old Men, as much as I like that movie, I would rather watch Oh Brother Where Art Thou. If I had to choose which one to watch, Oh Brother would win every time because it makes me laugh. No Country is not that funny.
No, not that funny. And it's represented at the top of my list, so we don't necessarily need to have the same exact list. So yeah, that's great. So again, normally we would have that outro topic, but since we talked about that, we'll skip that. We'll just kind of wrap up here. What were we planning on doing for our next episode?
All right. Well, since we have kind of like done a couple Coen Brothers, we've done the Palate Cleanser, the independent, the artsy films, part of the 90s Palooza thing we're doing.
Yeah.
I want to jump into the blockbusters. And the first thing I want to do is Terminator 2. Judgment Day. Because that's a big one, and we've got to talk about it.
Yeah, well, we've got to talk about James Cameron. I'm surprised that in our 70 episodes we haven't done that yet. Also, with Avatar: The Way of Water being out, I know that we were texting about all these, Top Gun Maverick is out. And it's like, oh, we could have covered Jerry Maguire. Like, oh, like Avatar's out. We could have covered a James Cameron movie. So yeah, that's a perfect time to. That's a seminal. I think. All spoilers, we're loving these movies that we're talking about, but I think Terminator 2 is probably one of the ultimate summer blockbusters. If you think about the summer blockbuster, I think of Terminator 2. It's just what you go to, you escape the heat, you go into an air-conditioned theater in July or June, something like that. That's the kind of movie that you're after.
Yeah, you scarf down the popcorn, you have a good time.
Right, and Terminator 2 is definitely one of the defining, man, that was what, 91? And it defined...
92.
One of those. So it defined.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. But it defined the entire decade, even though it came fairly early. So yeah, let's definitely talk about James Cameron. Such a big filmmaker. We're covering so many big filmmakers. I don't know why we wouldn't cover Cameron, even though what movies did he have in the 90s? He had
Titanic was the other big one.
Titanic and True Lies kind of got buried in there.
Right.
So definitely a force to be reckoned with, James Cameron. So yeah, that's a good picture. Let's dive back into the blockbusters. For NostalgiaCast, I'm Darin Lundberg.
And I'm Johnny Craddock.
And you betcha. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
All right. You betcha. Yeah, you betcha.